Go support Kenchi 618. Chapter 16, Run this town tonight. On the road. Fukinkhel Uzumaki brat. Hayden grunted angrily as he sat hunched over the steering wheel of the car that he and Naruto were sitting in. We're going to be later than all get out for the flight because you just had to let that Shinigami punk let off some steam. Naruto sat in the passenger seat clutching the armrest hard enough to leave divots from his fingers gripping it. Just calm down, Hayden. You can barely drive on normal streets and I barely feel safe with the driving you're doing right now. Hayden was currently piloting their vehicle at a speed of well over 90 miles per hour down the highway towards the large city that the airport of their choice sat in. Meh, who cares? We're immortal. I'm not immortal like that, you asshole. I can still die. Naruto shouted at Hayden with anime tears running down his face. Now slow down and pull over. I'm driving, damn it. Fuck no. Hayden argued right back. If you drive like the grandpa you are, we'll never make it on time for the plane out of here. I hate the desert, but I'm going to love flying on these airplanes I hear so much about. Naruto pulled his seatbelt tighter across his chest as Hayden dragged the car over 3 separate lanes to pass traffic. At this point Naruto was grateful that he was at least staying on their side of the road. If you keep driving we'll never make it because you'll roll the damn car over and blow us all up in flames. You're just being a pussy. Hayden shouted at his boss. We're making great time here. At this rate we'll make it there within the hour. Yeah, they'd make it there in an hour. If there was the hospital, I need to buy my own plane. Naruto cried as he gave up and sat in his seat waiting for sweet death to claim him by way of Hayden getting them into a horrible car accident. I'd learn how to fly, and then I'd have clones run it, and then this kind of shit would never happen. XXX. Karakura Town, Naruto's base. In the training facility, Gaara sat calmly on a rock as Tatsuki stood in her training clothes punching one hand into her other palm with a nervous look on her face. She had felt Gaara's Ryatsu the other day just like all of the others and it was crushing. Luckily for her, Gaara was still in his jigai, just sitting and waiting. Are you ready to begin, Tatsuki? Gaara asked in his usual tone of voice. By now Tatsuki, like most of the others, just accepted that Gaara was always going to talk that way. It didn't mean he wasn't a nice guy, or that there was something really off about him, it was just how he was. Naruto saw him as a close friend, so why shouldn't anyone else? The him being an Arrancar thing really wasn't a good excuse since Hayden was one too, and was infinitely more dangerous than Gaara just out of sheer lunacy. Tatsuki nodded to Gaara's question and set herself into a fighting stance. Yes, I'm ready. So what's the test that Naruto-sensei wanted me to take? Gaara dropped down from the rock and walked forward before stopping right in front of Tatsuki with his arms crossed. What's wrong? Are you going to tell me? Gaara merely closed his eyes. 1 hit. All you need to do is get 1 hit on me. It doesn't have to hurt, it doesn't have to even be solid, but if you can hit me once then you pass. 1 time? Tatsuki asked with a raised eyebrow. That seemed too easy to be a test to her. Gaara didn't even get out of that jigai of his before setting the order and it didn't look like he was going to. That's it? That's it. Gaara confirmed for her. I want you to use every little thing that Naruto instructed you on since day 1. From how to run to achieve better speeds, to the basic ninjutsu that he taught you. Nothing he taught you will be useless against me here. Use it all. Attack to kill or maim, otherwise you won't get close to laying a finger on me. Kill or maim? Tatsuki repeated in a whisper. She was used to full contact fighting, but there were rules, ethics, things that you just didn't do. She had been fighting in that manner since she was old enough to put on a pair of gloves and now Gaara was telling her to disregard all of that and simply fight to end a life. Gaara's eyes were closed as he nodded solemnly. Your enemies, our enemies, they will stop at nothing to achieve whatever goal they are after. When you accepted your abilities you accepted the life of fighting as a warrior, or in this case as a shinobi. I have killed more than my fair share in my time as has Naruto and I don't think you need me to get started on Hayden. Tatsuki gulped and shook her head. Naruto's original plan was to have you fight and defeat a hollow once one appeared, but he figured this test would be more appropriate, because our enemies won't look like outright monsters, they'll look human for the most part. Now enough talk. Take me down if you can, land 1 blow. I have to fight as if I were trying to kill you. She said mostly to herself before shouting as she ran forward at Gaara. She threw a punch only for sand to stop her punch in its tracks. What? Gaara simply stared at her, seemingly disappointed by her first attack, attacking head-on against a superior opponent? You threw what you've learned right out of the window without being prompted by pressure. Gaara's sand lifted her off of the round and shook her about. You never, 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 never attack an opponent head-on, even if you are stronger than them. Anything can be waiting for you in the case of a direct attack. Something like this. Gaara dropped Tatsuki to the ground, and as she landed on her feet his sand turned into a hand that flicked her in the face, sending her back. Tatsuki sputtered and spat out sand as she held her forehead where Gaara's sand hand hit her. How are you doing that? She asked, pointing at Gaara's ability to control sand. Can Naruto-sensei do that? Am I going to learn that? Gaara shook his head. It's a special ability that only I can do. Naruto can't do that, so you can't do that. And you won't be learning anything else until you can hit me. Now use your head. He more or less ordered. Tatsuki put her game face back on and prepared to head in again. She picked up a stone from off of the ground and threw it at Gaara only for it to bounce off of his sand shield and harmlessly, so direct attacks clearly won't work. I know how to work angles in fights, but I'm going to totally have to catch Gaara off guard here. She thought to herself. Tatsuki found herself in full retreat as Gaara's sand pursued her endlessly, so I've got to counter his own attack and find a way to catch him off guard and hit him? I think I would have rather fought the hollow for a test than this. She tried to change directions and get the sand to chase her back towards Gaara, whom she lost sight of, but when she looked at him again he was still standing right where she left him. This is it. She said as she drew closer to Gaara, all of his stupid sand is chasing me, there's none left to protect him. Gaara's body turned in Tatsuki's direction just in time for her to launch a punch that hit him right in the face. Gotcha. I pass. Now Naruto-sensei's gotta dash. Wait, what? She said when she realized that her fist passed through Gaara's face as he was made of sand, sand that grabbed a hold of her tightly. Hey, let me go. As you wish. Gaara said, stepping out from behind a boulder as he directed his sand to throw her away. Yelling in alarm as she sailed through the air, Tatsuki finally flipped through and landed on her feet, stumbling backwards but satisfied that after a week of training her dexterity had improved as well to go along with the ninjutsu that Naruto taught her and directed her to practice. As Gaara took up his usual place in the middle of the field, directing his sand to work things out for him, Tatsuki was really against trying to get close to Gaara again without a decent plan first. Tatsuki's complete lack of anything ranged was evident here as she stayed back. The most ranged attack she tried was throwing rocks at Gaara while on the run, something that didn't have the faintest chance of working. And Gaara was starting to get bored. A bored Gaara meant bad things for people. In the distant past a bored Gaara might kill someone. This Gaara, however? That odd threat that Naruto made to me the other day, how could he possibly apply that in the middle of a battle? He asked himself, not paying attention to Tatsuki as he held his hands in a tiger seal and looked at them. Well, he did manage to actually do it to me once, I wonder. Therefore it is an effective combat technique. As he did this, Tatsuki was taking the lapse in Gaara's attack to catch her breath behind the cover of a boulder. As she looked around the edge of it she no longer saw Gaara where he had been standing the entire time before this. Huh? Where did he go? You really shouldn't let your opponent get behind you all of the time. Tatsuki's eyes widened as she heard that voice behind her, and it made another statement to follow. What did he call it? Oh yes, I forget the full name, but, Senin Goroshi, 1,000 years of death. A large pair of sand hands from behind Tatsuki flew towards her exposed backside in the form of both the index and middle fingers being held out. The poor girl never knew what hit her. XXX. Elsewhere in the base, Yuruchi was with Urahara and Orihime as they sat in the kitchen. Aha! Orihime jumped out of her chair in shock as the yell from the basement echoed throughout the entire building as clear as day. That was Tatsuki-chan's voice. Do you think she's in trouble? Nah. Yuruchi said dismissively as she calmly sipped at the milk she had procured for herself. Naruto seemed to have a nasty habit of keeping milk in the refrigerator after it spoiled, never really checking to see if it actually was expired before drinking it. That had inspired her to keep her own stash for herself. His little trips to the bathroom, while extremely amusing, also kept everyone else from ever even wanting to touch milk that Naruto had bought if they hadn't seen him buy it that day. It's just training. Gaara won't have as many frills attached to his approach that Naruto does. He's just going ahead with the task assigned to him. It's going to be kind of rough, but the instructions were clear. No help. Urahara smirked at Yuruchi as Orihime sat back down. So I have a question. With nobody here having any more than basic medical skills, how do you guys heal after training too hard? Yuruchi shrugged in response, I don't know. We just sleep it off. We're usually busy working instead of training that hard, mostly just for upkeep, and no one's been hurt that badly that it would matter yet. Except for Haydn, but he's fine with it. The guy stabs himself with a spike on a daily basis. Urahara nodded in understanding before tilting his head towards Orihime. So is she a part of this yet like you and I? Yuruchi smiled at how Orihime got nervous at being put on the spot by the former 12th Division captain. She might as well be for as much as she stays around with Tatsuki when she trains. The boys are thinking about it for sure, not sure about Ichigo. I don't see why she doesn't join. The perks for what Naruto would ask you to do are great. She started listing things off on her fingers. You get a wonderful place to stay, apartment with everything, right here for free. Naruto will pay you for what you do, and he pays well. Yuruchi picked up where Urahara cut her off from, and he'd never make you do a mission you didn't want to do, nor would he make you do something he wouldn't go do himself. Man, I feel like a recruiter or something. She said with a laugh. I'll join. Orihime said, laughing as well, settling down to keep explaining, if I didn't then my powers wouldn't be any good for anyone except for me, right? I want to help. Yuruchi put her milk down and clapped her hands together. Very good. Now like I said, you get a place to stay here for free. You can keep living at your apartment that you have now, but you could move here if you wanted to. And don't worry about waiting to do anything until we tell Naruto, he'll be happy that you joined. This is going to be fun. Finally I have another girl in the group to talk to. What about Yururu? Urahara mentioned. Is she even here? Yuruchi countered immediately. She's at the shop with Jinta and Tessai. He answered as if it were obvious. Why? Yuruchi placed her cheek in her hand with a smirking look on her face that if she currently had a tail anyone watching would swear it was waving slowly. Yes, but that's not here though, is it? And what am I really going to talk about with a little girl Kasuke? Urahara frowned and stroked his stubbly chin. Point taken. And on that note I need to go back to the shop to check on things. Hopefully Jinta didn't destroy some of the things I have in storage again. He stood up from his seat and looked around the large eating area before he voiced his current thought. Is it just me or do things feel weird tonight? I mean, something just feels off and I can't explain it. I feel anxious. Yuruchi narrowed her eyes as she was able to sense something off as well coming from outside. It's not just you. She said as she stood up and headed to the basement. I need to go get Gaara. XXX. In the moonlit skies over Karakura town, a garganta opened up to reveal Tosen Kaname leading Sail Aporograns and Tia Harabel along with her fraction. You all know what to do. The former Shinigami captain said, it's time to let our enemies know just who they are dealing with. Sail floated off on his own. I think I will go and gather some research while we're here. Aizen-sama has expressed interest in a few special cases. I want to see what is so important about them. Very well. Tosen said, his blindfolded eyes unable to take in the sight of his Arrancar underling leaving. And you? He said, looking at Harabel. She nodded, knowing what his directions would be even before he spoke to her. I will show them the strength of the Espada, and that their resistance is a futile measure. She said before disappearing in a sonido along with her fraction. With his subordinates off to get to work on their tasks, Tosen simply stood there in the sky listening to the quiet old industrial district, waiting on the fireworks to begin. XXX. Harabel eventually came to a stop in the air, as if she were waiting for something. Her fraction who were following behind her came to a stop as well, wondering why she had done such. Apache spoke up, why did we dash? Harabel held her hand up to get her to be quiet before she seemingly spoke to someone who wasn't there. I am aware of you watching our movements. You cannot hide your power from me. Even when you have it concealed the way that you do right now, it is still very noticeable. In his own burst of sonido, Gaara appeared in front of her, now outside of his Jigai with his Zanpakuto de claw-looking spear on his back. He was still dressed in his desert garb, the white robe and the long beige scarf around his neck. I am still not used to concealing my power while I am awake. He said as he stood there with his arms crossed over his chest, the clothing that you all wear. You are in league with this Aizen Susuke person that Naruto has informed me of, are you not? Uzumaki Naruto told you this? Harabel asked, just as calmly as Gaara said, getting a nod from him. Then yes I am. Why do you choose to fight against Aizen-sama's ambition? You are fighting against your fellow Arrancar. Why? For a friend. Gaara said simply, the ambition of a megalomaniac holds no interest for me. I do not care about my existence as an Arrancar, it is just a meaningless label. There is no source of pride or disdain when I think of what I am simply Sabaku no Gaara and that is that. I have been given another opportunity to defend those that are close to me and this time I will not fail. Harabel nodded, but in her mind something else ran through it. Once again this Uzumaki Naruto, who came out of nowhere, got the trust of the Godai 13, made an enemy of Aizen, and now obtained the assistance of a clearly powerful Arrancar in seemingly no time at all. I am Tia Harabel. I am aware of this. Gaara said, surprising her. Naruto oftentimes comments on how our enemies are not all evil. You are the prime example that he uses when he speaks of such. He drew his spear from his back, pointing the claws at her. However, if you are here under the orders of Aizen, I must defeat you. Prepare yourself. Harabel's fraction all went to their weapons to provide assistance when Harabel stopped them. Do not interfere. She ordered, can you not feel the power he is trying to hide? This opponent is beyond your level to deal with. Even all three of you would more than likely fall by his hand. She gestured away. You have your own objectives to concern yourselves with. Make our presence known to our enemies. She said, more or less shooing them away. With the absence of her underlings, Harabel drew her Zanpakuto. Now that is out of the way, let us begin. She said before lunging forward to attack Gaara, who stood in place. Gaara lifted his spear forward and spun around in a full circle before lunging at her, using his momentum to further power his stabbing motion. The female Arrancar dodged to the side of the stab and came on down the line, intending to take her advantage as she saw it and cut Gaara down. With one hand, Gaara grabbed her wrist, stopping her from finishing her attack and cutting his head off. Gaara's emotionless green eyes stared at her as his hand shook violently in his attempt to hold her back. You are very powerful. Gaara said before letting go of her hand and getting away from her attack. When I went into hibernation there was only one hollow I would say had strength comparable to yours, my most bitter enemy. It seems I slept for far too long. I am an Espada. Harabel said informatively, one of the top 10 ranked Arrancar in Aizen-sama's army. I would certainly hope that I am considered to be strong. However, you are still holding back and I personally find that quite offensive. She began to generate her spiritual power to the point where it was clearly visible, being yellow in color. Gaara reset himself in his basic stance with his spear. It is not my intention to offend you. Gaara said as he started releasing his own power as well. I am just unused to fighting battles. I haven't fought at full strength in 2,000 years. Now would be the time to shake the cobwebs off, I guess. Gaara's Ryatsu was also yellow, but a duller tone, and was wispy, flickering away from his body like sand being blown in the wind. Sorry to keep you waiting. XXX. Hello Yoruchi. Tosen said as he ducked a powerful swinging kick that was intended for his head. He jumped away from the attack and faced her down, drawing his Zanpakuto. I wish I could say it was good to see you, but you and I both know that I am blind. Yoruchi stood on the air staring down one of Aizen's top conspirators with a hand on her hip. Hello Tosen. I wish I could say it was good to see you as well, but I missed my kick. She quipped impatiently. She didn't want any banter with someone like him, she just wanted to defeat him and be done with the whole thing altogether. His different look from the last time she saw him, what with him wearing a sleeveless form of the white uniform that she figured was par the course for Aizen's forces, the see-through blindfold around his eyes, and his hair with his braids all let down showed her that he was serious about his betrayal of the Godai 13. Tosen smirked. Well, I could hear you. My other senses are far greater than a normal Shinigami's, as you should know. I don't need to be able to see you, and the slightest noise, such as your clothing ruffling, is enough for me. Tosen then disappeared and reappeared right behind her in a split second. However, he didn't bother attacking, merely standing there until Yoruchi's form faded from existence. So that's your Utsusimi, Cicada. He said in an interested manner. I didn't think I would be able to feel the difference between the presence of you and one of your afterimages. Well, it's good to know if nothing else. Yoruchi said, as she stood back in front of Tosen, staying the way the battle had begun, with the two at a temporary stalemate. I don't understand why you would do what you did to the Soul Society, but I don't care. He wasn't fast enough to keep up with her, it's not going to change a thing. Tosen scoffed at the way Yoruchi spoke, as if he were the villain. Shihouen Yoruchi, perhaps the most legendary assassin in the history of the Seriidii. Of course someone like you would know nothing of justice. You're merely a tool, someone points at a target meant to be rid of and you perform the job. Someone like you follows no path, not that of justice nor corruption. Yeah. Yoruchi said with a sly grin. I'm pretty neutral until someone gives me a reason not to be. Her grin dropped and she flared her Ryatsu threateningly. Aizen's dumbass plan and the fact that you're going along with it is plenty of reason for this weapon to be pointed at you and yours. She growled out before using her notorious speed to get in a hit on Tosen that sent him flying to the ground below. Hitting him even just one time felt good, as Tosen wasn't known for being durable and able to take a beating. By her count she wouldn't have to work too hard to beat him as far as putting the boots to him went. That one punch probably crumbled his insides. As he fell to the ground, Tosin rolled in the air to get his feet under him and landed in the street, cracking the pavement with the force he hit the ground with due to how hard Yoruchi hit him. His legs wobbled underneath him as he spoke to her. Real justice would never appeal to someone like you, Shihuin. You need chaos far too much, just like your lover Uzumaki. He's a killer, more of one than possibly even Zaraki Kenpachi. He likes the bloodshed, the violence. Fighting is what he lives for, what he clings to. He is a tainted being. Yoruchi glared down at Tosin, her fists shaking as she heard him talk down about Naruto. He didn't need any more of someone else doing that. He did it enough about himself. Flashback, 4 days ago. Yoruchi lay naked in the bed in Naruto's quarters with a satisfied look on her face, covered by his bedspread. Yeah, about that clone we were talking earlier about you leaving. I think you spoil me too much for a clone to be enough. Naruto laughed as he got himself dressed in his school uniform. Trust me, as long as you didn't do something like hit it too hard or bite it hard enough to draw blood, it would be enough. He shook his head with a fond look on his face. I swear I don't get what it is you see in me, Yoruchi-chan. I mean, first of all, I'm older than you. Way older than you. Yoruchi let out a noise that sounded something akin to a purr before she spoke. I'd like to call you experienced more than anything else. She said with a predatory smile that she wished she could have acted on at the moment. Alas, Naruto had to take Gaara to school and they were already probably late, so what they had already done would have to wait for now. Naruto sat down on the bed and grabbed his socks and shoes to place on his feet as Yoruchi's fingertips began to dance along his back. I'm serious. I don't know how you can stand trying to be with me. You know what I am, what I've done, how long I've been doing it for. He placed his shoes on the ground to step into and stopped to look at his hands. Sometimes I'm glad that I can't die naturally and that it's going to take one hell of a fight for anyone to actually kill me. Yoruchi sat up in the bed, holding the sheets over her chest to cover her modesty, as if it mattered at this point. Why? I mean, I know that you've been alive for so long that it would be a major shift, but it would be okay. If you were to die, you would wind up being a Shinigami so fast it would be like you just moved. As if you just decided to live in the Soul Society instead of here. Let's be honest here, Yoruchi-chan. Naruto said as he finished tying his shoes. If I died, I wouldn't go to the Soul Society. I would probably go to hell. I've killed so many people, Yoruchi-chan. No matter what I do, I always end up fighting for some reason. And as much as I say I value peace, if there were no more battles to be fought, no more conflict in the world, then I wouldn't know what to do with myself. One of the only times I even feel alive anymore is on the battlefield. Hearing that brought a frown to Yoruchi's face. Naruto, no one else thinks of you that way. It wasn't that Naruto had low self-esteem by any stretch of the imagination. He bordered narcissism on a regular basis with how much he believed that he could do anything. For an example, he was planning on building an entire organization from the ground up with the intent to defend Karakura Town and whatever else with whatever he could recruit for himself. Is fighting the only thing that makes you feel alive? No, there are a few other things that make me feel alive. Naruto said, standing up and walking towards the door. He turned around and gave her a brilliant smile that made her heart skip a beat. You certainly do, for sure. He took a moment to just look at Yoruchi in his bed, and for some reason his gaze made her feel absolutely beautiful. He then left the room and shut the door behind him. All right, Gaara, it's time to go. Finally. Gaara replied tersely from a distance. You are absolutely depraved, did you know that? I heard all of that, by the way. Flashback end. Yoruchi spoke to her blind but dangerous enemy in a calm but edgy manner. If he's a tainted being, then I'm right there along with him, and I couldn't be any happier about it. People doing what Tosin planned to do alongside Aizen didn't get to say such things about Naruto. She didn't even like hearing him say such things about himself. How someone grew on her so much in just over 4 months she didn't know, and she didn't care. Tosin didn't respond. He simply held up his sword. Nake, Suzamushi, cry, cricket. With his Zanpakuto's Shirkai release command, a piercing, high-pitched noise hit Yoruchi's ears, forcing her to cover her ears in a futile attempt to block out the noise. I need to get away from that damned noise. Yoruchi thought before quickly backpedaling with her Shuinpa to get herself as far away from the noise as she could. Hadu number 54, Heian, Way of Destruction number 54, Abolishing Flames. An oblong blast of purple energy flew through the air at Yoruchi, hitting her body and incinerating it on contact with her. I missed her again. Tosen said quietly to himself before jumping back as an axe kick from Yoruchi put a hellish crater into the street where her foot landed. But you didn't get away unscathed, did you? Damn him and his stupid senses. Yoruchi no longer had on her orange long-sleeved overshirt as she had to cast it aside to avoid being caught on fire by Tosen's last kiddo. Instead she had on the backless, sleeveless shirt she wore underneath her orange top. Her shoulder had a slight burn on it and she had a trickle of blood coming from her ears, but other than that she was okay. He could probably smell my shirt burn when I got away. Tosen waved his sword in front of him slowly. You are just as fast as they say, Yoruchi. Let's see how fast that truly is. Suzumushi Nishiki, Banihiku, Cricket second movement, Crimson flying locusts. The sword vibrated momentarily before he moved the blade around him in a circle, a trail appearing from the path he made. The trail turned into hundreds of blades that rained down on Yoruchi. Showing her speed once again in a necessary manner to survive, Yoruchi dodged all of the blades that came her way, gritting her teeth as she decided to close the distance between herself and him, grabbing one of the fallen blades and pulling it from the ground to hurl back up at Tosen. Seeing the blade coming with his ability to see by sensing spiritual power, Tosen avoided impalement by way of his own weapon only for Yoruchi to appear behind him, her arm extended with her palm out, a red orb of energy in it. Hadu number 31, Shakahao, Way of Destruction number 31, Red Fire Cannon. A red pillar of energy flew from the orb and hit Tosen full contact, knocking him back into the side of a nearby building right through the wall. I know he's not done yet and neither am I. Yoruchi said to herself as she pointed her palm at the hole in the wall where she knew Tosen had gone and began an actual incantation, since to her knowledge he hadn't moved from where he landed. Sprinkled on the bones of the beast. Sharp tower, red crystal, steel ring. Move and become the wind, stop and become the calm. The sound of warring spears the empty castle. In Yoruchi's palm, yellow electric energy formed into an orb that crackled with power. Hadu number 63, Reikuhu, Way of Destruction number 63, Thunder Roar Seer. The attack was fired from her hand in a massive strike of energy that blew apart the inside of the building she had been aiming into. Yoruchi covered her eyes as the debris from her last kiddo kicked back at her by way of the backdraft. How terrible a weakness that must be dashed up. Yoruchi's eyes widened as a heavily injured Tosen walked out of the wreckage Yoruchi had just created, to have to protect one's eyes for fear of losing your sight. Luckily I don't have that disadvantage as I have never had my sight to lose in the first place. Tosen held his sword up and put his other hand on the ring that was attached to the guard of his blade, Bankai. Suzumushi Tsuushiki, Enma Kurogi, Cricket final form, Devil Cricket. The ring on Tosen's guard began spinning rapidly. Around Yoruchi and Tosen, the ring expanded in spiritual energy and split into 10 glowing ones. They then flew outward and formed a large black dome that was anchored to the ground around the two combatants. Within the dome Yoruchi could no longer see, it was pitch dark, and though she hadn't noticed it yet, she could no longer smell or hear a single thing. Gur, this is so not good. I'm a total dash dot. She wound up getting cut across her back harshly and dropped to the ground before rolling and escaping a follow-up attack for the moment. I'm a total sitting duck. XXX. Tatsuki was running through the empty streets of the old industrial district. Naruto's base was set in the middle of with Orihime following her close behind. Tatsuki-chan, where are you going? We were supposed to stay at the base until everyone came back. But what if they need our help? Tatsuki argued in return. I felt more than just 2 people show up in Karakura town. Yoruchi and Gaara are outnumbered. Heh. They heard a brash voice scoff. And what exactly are 2 weaklings like you going to do to help anyone? They both looked up into the sky to see 3 women, Mila Rose, Sunsung, and Apache, all standing there looking down at them. Apache smirked and kept speaking. You're strong enough to see us though? I wonder how useful either of you are in a fight. You are supposed to be our enemies after all. Tatsuki immediately dropped into a fighting stance while Orihime stood at the ready to do whatever was needed with her powers. The 3 women floated down to the ground in front of them, all looking at them in amusement. Mila Rose let out a laugh. Isn't that cute? These 2 humans think that just because they can see us they can fight us. Tatsuki tried to put up a confident front, but she could feel their ryatsu. While it was a far cry away from anything Gaara produced that day, or even what Naruto did himself to get her used to the oppressive feeling of fighting someone stronger than her, she could feel that these women were stronger than her. Still, it was fight or run, and she knew that if they ran she wouldn't get far as long as they could sense her, and she hadn't gotten around to learning how to stanch her chakra so that others couldn't sense her as easily yet. A good sensor would find her regardless. It's not just the two of us, Tatsuki said, making the ram, snake, and tiger seals that Naruto taught her for one of her techniques. Not anymore, it isn't. Bunshin no Yatsu, Glone Yatsu. The three fraction of Harabel went wide-eyed when they saw 10 copies of Tatsuki standing in front of them. Since when could humans do that? No one ever told them of anyone with special abilities like that outside of the one blonde human, the banished Shinigami, and the crazy Arrancar guy that they had come into contact with in Hueco Mundo not too long ago. That was kind of something that you needed to tell people before you sent them somewhere to do anything. Orihime looked at the copies of Tatsuki with a smile on her face as she was prepared to back her up. Finally getting over the small surprise at seeing a human with some fight in them, Mila Rose was the first of the Arrancar attack squad to speak up with confidence. So what? It doesn't matter if there's 1 or 10 ants, they'll all be crushed in the end, she said as she drew her broadsword-style Zanpakuto. The copies of Tatsuki narrowed their eyes at the remark and prepared an attack, as there was no way she was going to let any of these people harm her best friend as long as she was there. This is what I've been trying to train for, isn't it? All 10 of them ran forward, much to the growing amusement of her opponents. Apache laughed as she stepped forward and formed red bullets around both of her fists. You're certainly making this easier than it needs to be, aren't you? She asked before throwing punches that kept firing the blasts. Bala, hollow bullet. As the attacks flew rapidly at all of the Tatsukis and hit them, they faded from existence one by one until the last one was actually knocked back by the attack. Apache was about to taunt her again when Tatsuki's body was enshrouded in a puff of smoke, a piece of cracked debris falling to the ground in her place. What? Koten's Onchuan, solitary sacred cutting shield. Apache narrowly avoided the small flashing projectile that flew at her from Orihime and turned to glare at the girl, prepared to attack her for trying to catch her off guard. Dynamic entry. Tatsuki used her clones and a substitution as a diversion to get an attempt at a blindside attack that Orihime assisted heavily with. As she jumped through the air, intent on planting the sole of her shoe against Apache's face, Mila Rose appeared in front of her and grabbed her foot with one hand, only taking one step backward to brace herself for the impact. What was that supposed to be? Mila Rose taunted. Even if I'd let that hit someone as weak as Apache dashed. Apache then growled angrily at the jibe from her Amazonian-looking partner. There's no way that would have been enough to beat her. You're wasting our time, she said before throwing Tatsuki aside effortlessly. Tatsuki was able to back handspring and get her feet back under her, but felt like kicking herself for overlooking the other two. As if they would actually let things go one-on-one, especially after the assist from Orihime. Sung-sun laughed with her hand in front of her mouth. Still, for Apache to even be caught in a situation like that by a human. What does that say about her? Apache glowered at jokes being sent her way from both of her teammates and looked angrily at Orihime and Tatsuki. I'll tell you what it says that those two are dead right about now. At the tip of the horn on her head that was a part of her mask fragment, a red beam formed. Zero, hollow flash. The beam then fired directly at the two human girls. Tatsuki grit her teeth and prepared to move before she realized that Orihime was still there as well. What am I going to do about this? Come on, think. Santen Keshin, 3 sacred link shields, I reject. A clear yellow triangle shield appeared in front of both Orihime and Tatsuki that blocked the zero that had been fired at them. Tatsuki marveled momentarily at Orihime's defensive ability, looking at her only to get a smile in return. I'm no good at fighting, but I can be a good shield, I think. Tatsuki then smiled at her in return. Then I guess I really will have to get stronger, so I can do the fighting for the both of us. Apache blinked in shock at the two girls winding up unscathed after her zero. Just who the hell are they? Friends of ours, a stoic voice said before grunting in effort as a blast of energy flew at the 3 Arrancar women, forcing them to dodge. They turned to see Chad with his right arm outstretched from throwing his punch. Orihime, Tatsuki, are you two okay? Orihime nodded fervently. Yes, Sato-kun, we're just fine. How did you find us? Chad began to walk over to them, still keeping his eyes on his apparent enemies. We could feel the Ryatsu generating around this area of Karakura town. It was easy to find. We? Tatsuki asked with a raised eyebrow before another presence made itself clear to them all. How she had missed such a powerful aura she attributed to the gravity of the situation she had been in until just then. Ichigo? Yep. In a blur, Ichigo appeared in front of them all, facing Harabel's fraction. Sorry it took so long, I was kind of way on the other side of town. His eyes also never left the trio of Arrancar that he could see floating above them. I guess that these are the enemies that Naruto tried to warn us about. He was still in his Bankai form from his meeting with Naruto, and the overwhelming Ryatsu flowing from his body was something that couldn't be ignored. Apache hissed out a whisper to her partners, "Oh, now who the hell are these guys? That big guy almost actually hit us." Sung-sun wasn't paying Chad any mind, however, choosing to pay attention to Ichigo. "Never mind him. The other one, the one with the spiky orange hair, can you not feel that level of strength?" On the ground, Ichigo was already sufficiently warmed up by his little fight with Naruto and his rush all the way to the old industrial district. Needless to say, he was ready for another fight. "So are you just going to stand up there and gawk all day, or are we actually going to do this any time before midnight? Now that's the kind of attitude I like to hear, kid." The sound of that excitedly manic voice alerted everyone's attention to Haiden in his Arrancar form, black cloak with red clouds standing above them with his scythe in hand. His body was radiating the same terrifying power that the three women had felt when he first underwent his transformation. An evil grin on his face, Haiden descended down closer to the level of Haribel's fraction. "Well, now I'm glad we had to come back. I would have kicked my own ass if I'd missed this little party. Did you girls miss me?" Apache shook off her shock at seeing Haiden. "It doesn't matter if he has all of that power, he doesn't know how to use it. We can still kick his ass." Haiden cackled wildly. "I'm an old hand at killing. It's all I'm good at. All I needed was enough time to figure out how to best use the power for that reason." His dark purple Ryatsu started emitting from his body. "Who dies first?" "Fuck you!" Apache yelled at him, charging up another Zero at her horn. "The only one who's going to die here is you." Haiden licked his lips as he made a half-tiger seal and held out his free hand, building up a purple Zero there as well. "I would absolutely love to see you try." Zero, Hollow Flash. XXX. Gaara vs. Haribel. All across the sky, Gaara and Haribel clashed weaponry. As of yet, Gaara hadn't been able to strike home with his intimidating-looking spear, nor had Haribel been able to deal with the range that Gaara's weapon gave him that went along with his skill at using it. Haribel backed off enough to charge a yellow beam of power in the hollow portion of her Zanpakuto, Ola Azul, blue wave gun. She fired the blade-shaped energy projectile directly at Gaara. Gaara merely stabbed his Zanpakuto out towards Haribel's attempted attack, Tanuki no Tsum, Claw of the Tanuki. The blade of Gaara's spear detached from the pole it was at the head of and flew towards Haribel's yellow blade of energy, immediately disintegrating on contact, not slowing it down in the least. What was the point of that? Haribel wondered as she watched Gaara narrowly dodge her attack, letting it smash into a building below and demolish it. He had to know that his blade was weaker than my technique. What she didn't see were the granules of sand that comprised Gaara's blade reforming behind her in the shape of the claw it had been. Before it could bear down and strike her, Haribel dodged it in a burst of sonido, only to come to a stop and find Gaara above her, his now staff-like Zanpakuto held above his head for a downward swing that she had to life her own Zanpakuto to block with a resounding clang noise. As she blocked Gaara's attack, the claw flew towards the air behind her, trying to stab into her while she was busy with Gaara himself. Haribel tossed her Zanpakuto to the other hand and grabbed the polearm of Gaara, using her sword hand to swat away his Tanuki claw only for it to disintegrate into sand again. "Is it solid or isn't it?" she thought, and her answer came when the sand moved and grabbed a hold of her Zanpakuto arm. "I apologize for this," Gaara said, getting her attention. He had taken one of his hands off of his own Zanpakuto and had it held out to the side as if he were reaching out to grab something. Sabaku Soso, Sand Waterfall Funeral. The sand around Haribel's hand imploded and crushed her arm in a rain of blood. Gaara was surprised when her eyes barely even registered the damage that she had taken. What a strong will to not even cry out at such an injury. Haribel was able to free her now useless arm that hung limp at her side and snatched her Zanpakuto before it could fall with her other arm that was still good. "I don't need both arms to defeat you. Why do you not fight at full strength?" "Why don't you?" Gaara asked in return, his spearhead reforming on the tip of his staff where it had been originally. "My reason is simple. My Resurrection is too dangerous to use anywhere near populated areas or around those too weak to bear the amount of power it generates simply from its release. I would potentially harm my allies with it." Their conversation was cut short when Haiden's Ryatsu spiked over in the distance. "Oh. It looks like Haiden has returned." Haribel narrowed her eyes in the indicated direction as that was where her fraction had been dispatched. There were two towering powers coming from that direction that she was certain they wouldn't be able to handle. it seems our battle has come to an end for now, she said before disappearing with a low booming noise. XXX. Rooftop of Naruto's base. Nell jumped around excitedly as she waited by her two brothers, Dondo Chaka and Pesh. What's happening, she asked excitedly. All over the normally lifeless district, the power fluctuations of constant battle could be felt. Pesh started, scratching his head. There's a lot of fighting and, yeah, a lot of fighting. Cool. Nell exclaimed, who's winning? Pesh waited a moment before answering confidently, the stronger side of course. Yep. No question about that, the stronger people are totally winning right now. An arrogant-sounding voice sounded behind them as someone floated down to the surface of the roof. Well, Niliel tuo del Schwunk. To find you here of all places. Pesh and Dondo Chaka turned around slowly to see the pink-haired Arrancar with glasses standing there smirking. Sail Aporo Grands. How do you know Nell's name? Nell asked nervously, fully aware of how strong this individual was, just from his mere presence. What do you want with Nell? Sail looked at the crack in the mask on Nell's head and spoke. Of course you wouldn't be able to remember anything as you are. The attack all those years ago gave you amnesia as well as took your power. A grin came over his face. I did want to study such an effect back when it happened to you, and an opportunity like this won't just fall into my hands again. Come with me if you would, my dear. Dondo Chaka stood protectively in front of Nell, keeping Sail away from her as best he could. You won't touch any part of her, you bastard. Sail laughed at the attempt of the two other Arrancar protectors. Do you really think you two can possibly keep me from taking Neliel? It must be nice to be so delusional. All of a sudden he heard the door to the roof open up, prompting him to turn his head. You? Naruto walked up the stairwell leading to the roof and stood there, staring at Sail with a frown on his face. Well, we missed our flight, but I have to say that it was probably a good thing that Hayden can't drive for shit. His frown deepened thinking about the harrowing experience of being a passenger. He crashed the car 20 miles outside of town. We weren't even halfway there yet. Naruto rubbed his neck and disappeared before delivering a crushing kick to Sail that sent him flying off of the rooftop. Anyway, I'm pissed. And seeing you try to pick on a cute little Arrancar like Nell pisses me off even more. Sail caught himself in the air and touched his lip where blood was flowing from. He angrily drew his Zanpakuto as he stared down at Naruto. You were the reason I came here to begin with. Such an interesting rumor about you I've heard from Aizen-sama. You're supposed to be nothing more than a regular human and yet your Ryatsu is so intense at the moment. You're worth studying. Catch me if you can then. Naruto said, gesturing towards himself. It's going to be harder than you think to take me alive. Alive, dead, it doesn't matter. Sail shrieked maniacally. A body to study is a body to study. He said as a garganta opened as multiple other Arrancar poured out of it. Now attack him, my fraction. And they did, dropping from the sky around Naruto, preparing to do such. Naruto stood there, calmly counting them out on his fingers, having to use one hand twice to get them all counted before shrugging and cracking his neck. Okay, here we go. Jinchuriki style. Naruto's body was then covered in the same dark flame-looking chakra that he took on when he fought Ichigo's hollow earlier. Let's make this quick. Naruto reached up with his arm and from it, the arm of a giant, made from his dark chakra stretched out into the air and grabbed all of them tightly, crushing them almost effortlessly. He looked back at Nell and her brothers. Get off of the roof. And they wasted no time in doing just that, leaving Naruto to face Sail alone. Sail cared not for the deaths of his underlings as a grin came over his face at the sight of Naruto. What a glorious form. Such incredible power. What is its source? I need to know what this is. Tell me. An inferior being such as a human like you has no right claiming such power. Naruto looked up at the man as he began to rant madly about Naruto's power. Well, you say that like it was my choice. And the source of my power is a need-to-know basis. I don't feel like telling that to someone that's about to die here. Arrogant human. Sail said as he held up his Zanpakuto. Suzure, for Nicora's, sip, lewd concubine. He said, activating his resurrection as he swallowed the weapon. A glow then emitted from his mouth before his body began to swell up. Naruto made a step forward to take advantage, but Sail's body then emitted spiritual energy that kept him back, obscuring his vision and keeping him back. As Naruto found himself able to look upon Sail again, he found that his appearance had changed. His lower body was a multitude of purple tentacles with his feet extending from the bottom. They were then covered by a dress-looking garment. His upper body had on a tight gray shirt with white sleeves that had purple extensions flowing from them like teardrops. His hollow mask took the form of a headdress on the sides of his head, extending across his forehead and under his eyes. The ends of his hair were purple as well, and his hands became white with the tips of his fingers becoming purple. His left eye gained purple line markings. On his back there were 4 large branch-looking structures with many red strands hanging from them. "Take a look," Sale said after his transformation was complete. "Take a look at perfection." Naruto stared at him and blinked once. "Okay. I've seen it. Now what?" In response, Sale released a large amount of black liquid from his body that flew at Naruto from upwards. Naruto's eyes widened as he didn't see how he was going to dodge that much liquid from above him, and not knowing what it was made him not want to risk being hit by it. Naruto flared up his chakra and produced a solid black orb around his body that disintegrated the liquid on contact. When the orb disappeared, it revealed that Naruto was no longer there, having left through a hole in the roof. Sale's eyes widened and the red strands on his branches expanded to cover his body defensively just as Naruto attacked him from behind, holding a black sphere of chakra in his hand that expanded to twice his size. Inton, Cho Odama Rasengan, In Release, Super Great Ball Spiraling Sphere. Naruto slammed the jutsu into his enemy's body and around them a whirling torrent of black energy formed, impossible for anyone to see into, before Sale exploded out of it, landing into the side of a building, his branches on his back destroyed. "Gah! What did you do?" "I blocked with my wings and my Hiero." "How did that get through them both?" Naruto's right arm was uncovered, without any of his chakra shroud over it for a moment until it covered his arm again. "That jutsu manipulated the shroud around my body into an attack, concentrated enough to plow through anything. This is the strongest, densest chakra in the entire world bar none. It can break through anything. I am the Octava Espada. The 8th strongest in Aizen-sama's army. In my resurrection state you shouldn't be able to even come close to me." With his wings destroyed, Sale's greatest weapon was gone. If he couldn't catch Naruto in one of them and perform his technique, he couldn't win. "You worthless peon." He disappeared in a burst of sonito and reappeared at Naruto's back with his hand in a knife strike position. "Die." He thrust it forward, fully expecting to pierce Naruto's chest only to find that he didn't get past his black chakra shroud. "What? You won't finish me, you fool." Sale thought to himself, "My final technique can activate as long as you are touching me, and you are." He tried to initiate it only to find that he could not. "What? Why? He's grabbing me." He then scrutinized the chakra shroud and gasped, "This isn't a part of your physical body at all, is it? It's a part of your chakra, or whatever you call it." "Yep," Naruto said, "because I really don't want to touch you, so I won't." Kaze no Yaiba, Blade of Wind. From Naruto's fingertips, an invisible blade materialized in a gust and cut right through Sale once. Naruto let his chakra shroud fade, turning him back to normal as Sale's bifurcated body fell to the ground. Naruto stared at the 2 pieces of his body as he thought, so he was number 8, was he? What number was that Harabelle girl? And how strong are the other numbers? XXX. Yoruichi vs. Tosen. One would think that the lack of sight, smell, and sound would completely adversely affect someone in battle. Normally it would. It would affect a fighter that wasn't already somewhat trained in dealing with it. As the former leader of the Onmitsukado, Yoruichi was trained to defend herself and even win battles without her sight. The lack of hearing and smell that came with Tosen's Bankai was a problem, but not one that she couldn't deal with. She still had the feeling of touch. With as fast as she was, if she could feel when he might attack her, she could avoid it. Yoruichi was far faster than Tosen. Thus she was able to survive the battle thus far, until she got lucky and unleashed a sweeping kick that nailed Tosen right in the stomach. "Yes. Got you, you slippery sack of crap." The dome then faded. Why, she had no clue. It was a glancing blow, but she'd be damned if she wasn't going to take advantage of it and finish things here. As she prepared to activate Shunku, she looked around to find Tosen back in the sky. "You're running away? I forget, you can't sense anything while my Bankai is active." Tosen said as a garganta opened, "I'm not going to tell you anything other than this isn't over, Shihu and Yoruichi." He said that, but thought something to himself as he held back the internal injuries that Yoruichi's kick gave him. "I wonder if Aizen-sama is willing to bestow a power on me greater than my Bankai." Yoruichi took a moment to sense things around her and found that Naruto and Hiden's signatures were back in Karakura town. As the sky closed on Tosen, she narrowed her eyes at him and nursed her numerous cuts. "You're damn right this isn't over. We never even got started." XXX. Haydn held his scythe in his hand and looked at the 3 female Arankar that he had been familiar with before tonight. Hey Shinigami kid. He said, addressing Ichigo, do you mind if I take all 3 of them myself? We've got something of a thing going on, besides, I've got something I want to test out. He grabbed the pike that hung around his neck and extended it, pointing at his chest, my Resurrection. He's going to use his Resurrection? Sung-sun, Mila Rose, and Apache thought at the same time. Ichigo scratched his head in confusion as he and all of his friends looked up at Haydn as he asked a question. I'm sure, but what's a reserve, whatever you called it? Haydn rolled his eyes, my actual true power you stupid brat, keep up. He shouted before Harabel appeared behind him. As a reflex, Haydn turned around with a wild swing of his scythe, only to miss as Harabel dodged him with her sonido to get to her underlings. Oh no you didn't bitch. No one creeps up on me, doesn't stab me for the trouble, and just walks away. Sung-sun looked in Harabel's wound with her hand in front of her mouth out of shock. Harabel-sama, your arm. A wound that can be treated once we return to Hueco Mundo. Harabel insisted stoically, it's time for us to return. So soon Harabel-chan? Naruto appeared in the sky next to Haydn, using his swift release to get there quickly. We never got to talk. That's kind of disappointing. He said with his arms crossed. Haydn tried to step forward when Naruto's command stopped him, down boy. Gaara appeared then also. I didn't get to fight. Haydn said indignantly, come on, what the fuck? Naruto then narrowed his eyes at him, you flipped the damn car over the median. You're lucky I didn't kick your ass all the way back to Karakura town. The only thing that saved you was that we had to run from the cops. Too many questions to answer for a car that wasn't even registered under my name. Haydn retreated back a few feet. He wasn't in his jigai. Naruto could kill him as he was like this, never mind then. Until next time Uzumaki Naruto. Harabel said, you're as much of a threat as we considered you. You and your allies. With that a garganta opened and the espada and her fraction stepped through it. Naruto watched the portal close and let out a sigh, looking around the somewhat wrecked area, but who cared? No one came around there except him anyway. Well, that's a good job Dream Team. He said in reference to Gaara and Haydn. He descended and landed, very close to Tatsuki as a matter of fact, getting her to step back. Did you hit Gaara? Tatsuki's face took on one of shock. She completely forgot about the test once Gaara left. They had been fighting for 3 hours and she hadn't managed to hit him. Looking down at the ground, she shook her head, unable to look up at him. No? I guess it's back to the beginner stuff, huh? Naruto just looked at her before looking over at Gaara. She didn't hit you? Gaara shook his head. Well, what about the test part of the exercise? Gaara ignored the look of confusion on Tatsuki's face and walked up to Naruto. Tatsuki fought against the enemy with only the skills you've given her thus far. She did not retreat. In our battle she did the same. She never gave up or faltered. She would have kept going if we weren't alerted to the presence of Aizen soldiers. Naruto nodded as he took in this information. Well Tatsuki, in that case if Gaara says so then you pass. What? Tatsuki said with a blank look on her face, not understanding why he was passing her. But I didn't hit him. I never even got close to Gaara, so how can you say I passed? Because you were never meant to actually hit Gaara. Naruto said as if it were as plain as day. Ichigo still didn't understand. The test seemed clear. There didn't seem to be any in-between point for hitting Gaara or not hitting him. If Tatsuki didn't get it done then why was she being passed? It was weird. What do you mean? You just said that her test was to hit Gaara. You're a confusing guy Naruto. Naruto chuckled, I gave her an impossible task. At seeing the shock on everyone's face, he elaborated, do you all know how hard it is to lay a single finger on Gaara if he doesn't want you to? Only the fastest, the strongest, or someone with a hell of a lot of tricks to their credit can get past his sand shield when he's in his jigai. He lifted his fingers and started listing things. Tatsuki, for as good as she is isn't fast enough to get around it, she isn't strong enough to brute force her way through it, and I only taught her the most basic ninjutsu in existence, none of which are going to fool Gaara on his worst day or give her enough of an opening to touch him. Orihime was lost, way back at the point when Naruto said that Tatsuki passed, so, what was the point of the test? Naruto put a hand on Tatsuki's shoulder. If you had thought that it was impossible, if you had quit before Gaara told you to stop, then I couldn't have trained you any further. That was all to make sure you had enough drive to keep going when my training got hard, and if you didn't then at least you would have a few tricks that might keep you alive if you were attacked. His face was serious as he spoke. Tatsuki-chan, I can work with pretty much anything. I'll be able to make you stronger no matter how good you are or how good you aren't, but the thing that I absolutely can't do anything with is someone that's a quitter. You need guts to do the things we're going to have you doing. And there it was. The point of the test wasn't a measure of her skill, it was a measure of her determination. Complaining about how unfair it was, or giving up in the middle of the test would have resulted in her failure. It was as simple as that. So, Tatsuki said hopefully. Like I said, you pass. Naruto said with a grin on his face, and per the agreement you get a new jutsu. Gaara? He said, expecting Gaara to toss her the scroll he had placed the jutsu on. Gaara shrugged and gestured to his clothing. The scroll is in my jigai, not with me, Naruto. Naruto deflated, the flow of the moment broken up. Oh well, you can give it to her once you get back inside. Me and Hayden need to get going. Why? Ichigo asked. They had just gotten back and now he was going to leave again. Hayden looked away sheepishly while Naruto glared at him and answered the substitute Shinigami, because of someone's shitty driving we missed our flight, so we have to leave now and get to the airport to get tickets for the next flight out and to make sure we don't miss that flight too. His glare deepened as Hayden hid behind Gaara. I'm driving this time, he asserted with a growl. XXX. Yoruichi sat on the roof of a building as Urahara sat behind her bandaging the wounds she suffered in her fight with Tosen. Urahara grinned widely as he finished the job. So you're not going to go get a quickie from your boyfriend before he leaves again? He tried to tease. Yoruichi just smirked in response, not even bothering to turn around. Please? Naruto's going to leave as fast as he can. And there's really no such thing as a quickie for us. If we started, we wouldn't stop for the rest of the night. She then let out a sigh, and then he'd be late to get back from where he's going. He would miss more than Monday's classes if we did that. So responsible, aren't you, Yoruichi? Urahara snickered before getting serious. So what do you think? Yoruichi looked up at the sky, ignoring the moon to look at the area where the Garganta had been opened not too long ago. I think we've got a hell of a lot of work to do. They struck back the same way that we did. They know that they can get to us just as easily as we can get to them, and we're all by ourselves. You have to wonder how quick the Siriidi's response would be in the case of an all-out attack against us. Ooh. Urahara said in interest, I smell a field trip. Too bad I can't go though, but I guess there are things I can do here as well, so don't worry about me. Yoruichi let out a laugh. I never do Kasuke. You know that. Make immortals like us. 2 days after leaving Karakura town, Naruto and Hayden were resting atop a cliff in an extremely arid environment, with the silver-haired man holding a pair of binoculars to his eyes. Both of them were wearing desert camouflaged clothing and had automatic rifles on their persons. Why are we here, Uzumaki brat? This seems pointless to me. Naruto, who was sitting back relaxing in preparation for what they were about to do in mere moments, eyed Hayden with a raised brow. What part of 50 million American dollars seems pointless? Calm down, this'll be over in all of 5 minutes. My clones, plus the fact that you can't die in that body will make sure of that. I've been meaning to knock this guy off for like 10 years. Why the fuck didn't you get around to it sooner then? Hayden asked him irritably. He hated desert environments, and having to actually work in one left him crankier than usual. You don't even fucking need me for this. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I just never got around to it. I was going to let the country he fucked with get him, but it's been 10 years, that means it's my turn. And I don't need you, but we were in the neighborhood so I figured why not get some easy money while we're here? It's not like these people are shinobi, and the closest thing to a shinobi around here is that military academy we saw. We'll be done by the time they figure out what's up. He pulled the rifle from his back and switched the safety up. Now saddle up, asshole, we have a flight to catch tonight. Hayden sighed and did the same as Naruto, frowning at the noisy weapon. Why can't I just use my scythe? Naruto shook his head. Too many questions to answer, such as, how the fuck did you get close enough to that guy to fuck him up with a scythe? Besides, we need his body in good enough condition to be identified, otherwise we ain't getting paid. Just point and shoot, dumbass, a monkey could use these things. Hayden then smirked, hence why after thousands of years you're finally acceptable at using them. Feeling satisfied at Naruto's growl, he brought up another point. Yoruichi's going to be pissed off when she finds out why we're late. She's not going to find out we even did this because you're not going to tell her, and neither is anyone else. Naruto commented, confident in that fact. You're going to walk in there, be my human bullet shield, shoot your gun, meanwhile while you miss every shot because you suck I'll be hitting them and eventually I'll empty a clip through the target's chest and we can go home $50 million richer. Hayden nodded, cocking his gun before smiling faintly. Cammy, it feels good to do this again. Not with the guns because I hate these stupid things. Naruto nodded in agreement of their distaste in guns, but just this you know? He then shook his good mood off and put the sneer back on his face. Alright, enough sentimental bullshit, let's do this. Alright, remember the plan. Naruto said, you go in towards the front and raise hell. I'll go through the back and they'll be screwed. I can understand their language anyway, you can't, so I can hear how they're going to respond to whatever you do. Where the fuck are we anyway? Hayden asked as they started descending the cliff towards a small community of well-to-do compounds. Pakistan. Naruto said absently, Abbottabad I think this place is called. Do I have to take this bin-laden guy alive? Hayden asked again, hoping for a response in the negative. Naruto picked his ear before flicking it and pulling a balaclava over his face. I don't care. We get paid alive or dead. Now lock and load, dickhead.